Thank you very much. Before I begin, I'd like to express my appreciation to the University Malaysia Terengganu and the Trans-Artemia Research Group, Professor Yong and the Malaysian team for making this meeting possible. Patrick Sorgelus and Ambassador, very pleased to have you with us. So I was asked to give a brief presentation on NACA's role in supporting the International Artemia Aquaculture Consortium. So I'll give a brief overview of the structure and some of the recent activities. And the speakers after me will talk more about some of the issues and opportunities that the consortium seeks to address. And I guess my first remark would be just to note that the consortium actually, as Patrick mentioned, originated here in Kuala Lumpur. That's where the idea came from. Okay. So I work for the network of aquaculture centres in Asia Pacific, and if you're not familiar with NACA, it's an intergovernmental organisation with 19 member states that collectively produce about 90% of global aquaculture production by volume. Malaysia is a member state, and the International Artemia Aquaculture Consortium has 44 members from 29 countries. These include 39 institutions, universities and projects, and 5 private industry partners. So the consortium is governed by a steering committee of 10 members drawn from Asia, Africa, the Americas, Europe and the Middle East. The current chair is Professor Yong from UMT, who of course is with us here today. And additional guidance is provided by an advisory committee chaired by Professor Patrick Sorgelus, with members representing FAO, the academic and private sectors. The consortium is hosted by NACA, which publishes the consortium website and conducts awareness raising, and we will also be hopefully working on education and training and capacity building activities in the near future as well. The consortium's initial activities, working in partnership with members, have been a series of workshops and webinars exploring issues in Artemia management and utilisation around the world. Of course, most of this has happened with the backdrop of COVID, so a lot of this has been online so far. But NACA's involvement with the IAAC began in 2021. We convened a webinar on the status and use of Artemia cysts in fish and crustacean hatcheries around the world. And shortly after, the SDG-aligned Artemia Aquaculture Workshop, which was held in conjunction with the Global Conference on Aquaculture, Millennium Plus 20. In 2022, we also participated in a couple of other events organised by the consortium and its partners. One was the webinar on management of Artemia resources of the Great Salt Lake, Utah, and a webinar on the history of Artemia activities in Africa, which was organised by the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute. In August 2022, NACA agreed to host the consortium virtually, which means that we basically perform a secretariat function, assisting with the coordination of activities and information sharing, maintaining the consortium website, and I hope we will be doing some training later on. But at NACA, we are quite excited about the possibilities of the consortium because it touches on a surprisingly broad range of issues. It really does, ranging from conservation of Artemia biodiversity, science-based protocols for the harvesting and management of wild resources, the possibility for integration of Artemia into artisanal salt farms in Asia and Africa, development of new applications for Artemia through selective breeding and strain selection. I think you'll hear some of that today. The integration of Artemia farming with fish and crustacean aquaculture, use of Artemia biomass as a high-value protein source for people, studies on climate change impacts on Artemia production, and further research on Artemia biology, as well as training and capacity building on all of these things. So I'd like to invite you to visit the consortium's website for further details about the activities. The website currently provides video recordings of all the technical presentations from the workshops that I've mentioned, a member directory, committee structure and contacts, and a continuously updated list of recent Artemia literature. In future, the website will also include outcomes of consortium research, which we anticipate will include updated Artemia production reference manuals, natural resource management protocols, and video-based training and educational materials. I'll just mention that all of the webinars that I mentioned so far, all of the technical presentations from all of those are available on YouTube and via the Consortium website as well. So you can go back and see the whole technical proceedings of any one of those meetings if you'd like to. So that's all I'll say about NACA's role in the Consortium and its activities to date, but I'd like to spend a few minutes on a more recent development, which was the outcome of a side event on the potential of Artemia for aquaculture transformation, which was held in conjunction with the 12th session of the FAO Committee on Fisheries, Subcommittee on Aquaculture in Mexico about 2 months ago. So over the past 2 years, the Consortium membership through these various activities has gathered a lot of input from the scientists and feedback and participants and come up with a series of 8 recommendations as a result of the discussions. These recommendations were presented at the side event by the IAC chair, Professor Yong, and discussed by the meeting. And briefly, these recommendations were to develop science-based protocols to assure sustainable harvesting of wild Artemia sources for aquaculture, the development of quality certification of Artemia cyst products following guidelines proposed by FAO and hopefully approved by a future session of COFI Subcommittee on Aquaculture, the development of improved guidelines for biosecure production and use of Artemia in hatcheries, assess the contribution and demand of Artemia resources to the development of aquaculture transformation and estimate the irreplaceable limit of Artemia in the developing aquaculture industry, to look at the impact of climate change on Artemia production in inland lakes and coastal saltworks, because they do inhabit some very, very harsh environments that are very on the margins already. To consider the sustainable integration of Artemia production into artisanal saltworks and its potential contribution to improving the livelihoods of rural communities. To promote and investigate the production and use of Artemia biomass as a low in the food chain, high nutrition food in nursery and broodstock diets for aquaculture, as a fish meal alternative, and also as a potential human food. And lastly, to conserve Artemia biodiversity and to initiate strain selection and selective breeding for new applications of Artemia in aquaculture. So the outcomes of the Artemia side event were reflected in the report of the FAO COFI subcommittee meeting, which noted the need to secure the long-term availability of Artemia, prepare protocols for the sustainable harvesting of wild Artemia resources, biosecure production and certification of cyst products, to conserve Artemia biodiversity, to support strain selection and selective breeding, to encourage Artemia production in saline lands and saltworks, and to investigate the use of Artemia biomass in feeds as a fish meal alternative and for human consumption. So over the past couple of years, the activities of the Consortium and its partners have raised the awareness of the critical need for the Artemia to supply the aquaculture industry, but it has also raised awareness of the significant opportunities that exist to harness the potential of this amazing animal. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Silman.